Thank you for joining us. This is story time with twisted slivers from the paranormal, the unreal, the real, fictional, and maybe just a sprinkle of truth. Echoes of the Past. Dr. Margaret Hayes, a renowned psychologist, had always prided herself on a rational mind. Her unwavering skepticism had served her well. Her days were filled with patient consultations, research, and lectures that debunked pseudoscientific claims. So when she received an invitation to investigate the purportedly haunted Blackwood Manor, she accepted. Eager to expose the myths surrounding the estate, Dr. Hayes was certain, her years of research and study, that she knew how to point out the truth and prove reality to those who clung to unsubstantiated, meaningless paranormal beliefs. Arriving at Blackwood Manor, she took in the sight. The manor stood isolated atop a hill, with its Gothic architecture casting long shadows under the pale moonlight. Locals had long whispered tales of ghostly apparitions and unexplained phenomena, but Margaret dismissed them as superstitions. Armed with her recording equipment and her steadfast logic, she entered the manor. She was determined to document and demystify all of the stories and rumors of the stately home. The grand foyer greeted her with silence. Oddly, dust particles danced in the air in the low light. As she explored the dimly lit corridors, she noted the creaking floorboards and the distant sound of dripping water. All mundane explanations for what others might perceive as eerie. Margaret wasn't buying it. So far, it just seemed to be like an old house creaking with the noises of age. Hours passed without incident, and Margaret felt a growing sense of validation. This place just needs a handyman and a good cleaning, she mused. In the library, she discovered a collection of journals belonging to the manor's original owner. His name was Sir Reginald Blackwood. The entries in his journals detailed the descent into madness. He was plagued by visions of shadowy figures and haunting whispers. Margaret surmised that the isolation in this big manor and possible mental illness had contributed to his delusions. She truly enjoyed reading the journals. She studied them in earnest. Everything she read supported her theory about Sir Blackwood. As midnight approached on the first night, Margaret set up her recording devices in the manor's bedroom. This was the master bedroom where Sir Reginald was said to have spent his final days. Holding tight to her disbeliefs, she felt the recorder was necessary to prove her point. This was going to be a big, giant nothing burger. She set up her recorder, set up the video recorder, and settled into a chair to prepare for a long, eventful night. Well, at least the chair was comfortable in this oversized, stuffy room. Without warning, the temperature dropped suddenly, and a deep chill ran down Margaret's spine. The once quiet manor now seemed to come alive, with faint murmurs and distant footsteps. Margaret's rational mind struggled to attribute these sensations to natural causes. Serious doubts began to creep in. Oh my gosh, you're alone in a strange house. Of course this is unsettling, she told herself. But then a soft lullaby echoed through the halls. It grew louder as it neared the bedroom door. Much to Margaret's complete horror, the door creaked open. It revealed a translucent figure, a woman in a tattered gown. She was humming softly as she cradled an invisible infant. Margaret's breath caught in her throat. Her skepticism began to waver. The apparition's eyes met Margaret's, and Margaret noticed they were filled with sorrow and longing. "Have you seen my baby?" the ghost woman wailed. Her voice trembled with despair. Margaret's mind was racing. She was torn between her logical beliefs and the undeniable presence before her. She mustered the courage to respond. No. What happened to your child? Tears were streaming down the woman's ethereal cheeks. He was taken from me by the darkness, by the evil one. I never trusted her, not ever. Before Margaret could ask any more questions, the apparition faded, leaving the room engulfed in silence once more. Margaret quickly reviewed her recordings and the video recorder, but they didn't capture anything. No lullaby, no ethereal voice, no translucent figure. Only Margaret herself, moving on the film and speaking to the room and all, but nothing but herself. Frustration and confusion gnawed at her. This place is really starting to get to me. Reading those journals must have triggered my imagination, she reasoned. Determined to soothe her doubts and find the truth, Margaret delved deeper into the manor's history by searching through old books in the library. She discovered that Sir Reginald's wife, Eleanor, had died under mysterious circumstances. Some thought it was at the hand of the child's nanny, because this nanny blamed Eleanor for the child's disappearance. The infant son had vanished without a trace. No noise, no footprints, no break-ins, just simply disappeared. He was placed in his bed one night, and when everyone woke up the next morning, the infant was gone. Rumor suggested that Eleanor's grief-stricken spirit haunted the manor, searching eternally for her lost child. Sir Blackwood was convinced that the manor itself was evil, and that it had a living, supernatural power. He demanded one clear afternoon that all hired help leave the house, including the nanny. The nanny fought and resisted, and barricaded herself in the nursery. When the door was finally opened, once again, another person was missing from the manor. No nanny. The room was empty. Whew, that's a lot to process, thought Margaret. My week here is certainly going to be interesting. Margaret's nights became plagued with visions of an ethereal Eleanor, each encounter more vivid than the last. The conversations were filled with sorrow, angst, and misery. Margaret's once clear distinction between reality and supernatural began to blur. She began to question her own sanity. Her investigations of Blackwood Manor was not going to be a report that she could share with any of her colleagues. She could only imagine what they would think. On the final evening, as she prepared her suitcase to leave the manor, Margaret noticed a small, ornate box on the bedside table. She was absolutely certain this box hadn't been there before, and she knew it didn't belong to her. She opened the box. Inside, she found a delicate silver rattler tarnished with age. A chilling realization washed over her. This was the missing child's toy. She felt it. She knew it. This was a clear message from Eleanor to Margaret. All of a sudden, the room grew cold, and the lullaby filled the air once more. Eleanor appeared with her eyes fixed on the rattle in Margaret's trembling hands. "You found it," she whispered, a very sad smile gracing her lips. Eleanor reached out towards the rattle to take it from Margaret, but before Margaret could react, the air around her turned thick and began to twist into a black cloud. Margaret was lifted into the air and pulled into the swirling air. She could look from above to the floor beneath. It slowly opened and gave away in the corner. She suddenly found herself in a hidden chamber between the bedroom and the walls. She was surrounded by remnants of a very old nursery. There were broken toys, a dusty crib, and faded portraits. In the corner, she discovered the saddest, tiny skeleton clutching a decaying blanket. Horror and sorrow overwhelmed her as she realized the fate of Eleanor's child. The infant had been hidden from her family and left to meet her fate as her mother suffered in search for her child. Who could have done this? As Eleanor was shown the entire tiny space, she saw what looked like a skeleton of what was once an adult, still in a dress and a shawl of yesteryear. Her nanny. The nanny had taken the child for herself, and to escape blame, she had blamed Eleanor. When she passed, so did the child from neglect. The nanny had never left the home. Eleanor's spirit materialized beside the remains. Her form was much more solid than before. She was clearly smiling. "Thank you," she murmured. Her voice was filled with gratitude and relief. "If you will tell our story, we can finally rest." As a mother and child turned to leave, Margaret noticed a tall man waving to them in the distance of the light. They all vanished into a soft glow, and Margaret was left feeling a profound sense of peace. All of a sudden, the manor seemed lighter. She was immediately pulled from the darkness and found herself sitting on the bed. She had been forever changed by this experience. Her skepticism had been shattered and replaced by an understanding that some mysteries transcend logic and reason. Days after her departure, an archaeological team went to the house to excavate the hidden room. Everything was found just as Margaret reported, and the long mystery of Blackwood Manor had been solved.